Guten Abend, herzlich willkommen zu unserer heutigen Online-Veranstaltung. Ich möchte ganz herzlich unsere Gäste begrüßen, die heute auf dem Podium sitzen, auf dem virtuellen Podium. Und zwar begrüße ich ganz herzlich Ivana Nikolic und Branimir Djurovic von der Jugendinitiative für Menschenrechte. Branimir, Ivana, hallo, schön, dass ihr heute Abend da seid.
Hello.
Hello.
Außerdem begrüße ich ganz herzlich Alexander Vojvoda, meinen Kollegen von unserem Pro-Peace-Team im westlichen Balkan. Alexander, du bist uns heute Abend zugeschaltet aus Belgrad. Schön, dass du dabei bist. Hallo.
Hallo, schönen Abend.
Und dann möchte ich außerdem noch mich ganz herzlich bedanken bei unseren Förderern, die die Veranstaltung heute Abend unterstützen. Das sind Engagement Global mit Mitteln des Bundesministeriums für wirtschaftliche Entwicklung und Zusammenarbeit, die Stiftung Umwelt und Entwicklung Nordrhein-Westfalen und Brot für die Welt. Ganz vielen Dank an der Stelle für die Unterstützung. Ja, was ist unser Thema heute Abend? Worüber wollen wir sprechen? Friedensarbeit im Gegenwind, das ist der Titel einer ganzen Reihe von Veranstaltungen, zu denen wir im November einladen. Jeden Mittwoch im November blicken wir in eine der Projektregionen von Pro-Peace und fragen, wie kann Friedensarbeit gelingen, selbst in Zeiten von Krieg und eskalierender Gewalt. Die Einblicke in die Arbeit unserer Partnerorganisationen, die zeigen, wie Friedensarbeit trotz äußerst schwieriger Rahmenbedingungen Wirkung entfalten kann. Zum Beispiel in Serbien, wo das politische Klima zurzeit ausgesprochen aufgeheizt ist und zivilgesellschaftliche Organisationen wie die Jugendinitiative unter starkem Druck stehen. Darüber werden wir gleich mehr erfahren. Für diejenigen von Ihnen, die Pro-Peace noch nicht kennen, möchte ich uns noch ganz kurz vorstellen an der Stelle. Pro-Peace ist eine international tätige Friedensorganisation, die Menschen weltweit in ihrem Einsatz für den Frieden stärkt. Gegründet wurden wir tatsächlich schon 1996, also schon eine ganze Weile her, von Friedens- und Menschenrechtsgruppen, damals unter dem Eindruck der Kriege im zerfallenen Jugoslawien, also genau in der Region, in die wir heute Abend blicken werden. Die Gründerin von Pro-Peace, damals noch unter dem Namen Forum Ziviler Friedensdienst, der wird dem einen oder anderen hier bestimmt auch noch was sagen. Die Gründerin, die hatten die feste Überzeugung, dass es andere Antworten geben muss auf Krieg als Militäreinsätze, als Waffenlieferungen, als Sicherheitspolitik. Und aus dieser Überzeugung ist der zivile Friedensdienst entstanden, den wir bis heute umsetzen. Ziviler Friedensdienst, das heißt, professionell ausgebildete, professionell geschulte Fachkräfte, Friedensfachkräfte, reisen in die Länder, sind dort tätig, sind da dauerhaft vor Ort und arbeiten gemeinsam mit der lokalen Zivilgesellschaft daran, Wege für den Frieden zu öffnen und einen gewaltfreien Umgang mit Konflikten zu finden. Die ersten Fachkräfte des zivilen Friedensdienstes sind übrigens 1999 ausgereist, und zwar in den westlichen Balkan unter anderem. Das war mit die erste Projektregion, in der wir bis heute arbeiten. Jetzt könnte man meinen, westlicher Balkan, da ist ja kein Krieg mehr. Also warum braucht es da noch Friedensarbeit? Aber das werden unsere Podiumsgäste gleich schildern. Die Auswirkungen der Kriege der 90er Jahre sind bis heute sehr präsent in diesen Ländern. Zum Beispiel werden Kriegsverbrechen wie der Völkermord von Srebrenica bis heute von Teilen der Gesellschaft, von Teilen der Politik geleugnet. Es gibt alte Feindbilder, die nach wie vor fortbestehen, und junge Menschen wachsen auf mit diesen Feindbildern und mit auch einseitigen Darstellungen und Erzählungen darüber, wer im Krieg Täter war und wer Opfer war. So kann kein Frieden wachsen. Und deshalb liegen die Schwerpunkte der Arbeit von Pro-Peace im westlichen Balkan auf Friedensbildung und auf der Aufarbeitung von Vergangenheit. Ein ganz wichtiger Partner für uns in dieser Arbeit ist die Jugendinitiative für Menschenrechte oder auf Englisch der Name der Organisation Youth Initiative for Human Rights. Die Jugendinitiative arbeitet schon seit über 20 Jahren grenzüberschreitend im westlichen Balkan. Sie ist tätig in Serbien, in Kroatien, in Montenegro, in Bosnien und Herzegowina und auch dem Kosovo. Und der Fokus liegt vor allen Dingen auf der Arbeit mit jungen Menschen, Über 15.000 junge Menschen haben bisher schon teilgenommen an verschiedensten Austauschformaten, an den Programmen, die die Jugendinitiative anbietet. Und für diese Arbeit hat die Jugendinitiative letztes Jahr den Friedenspreis in Aachen, den Aachener Friedenspreis bekommen, wurde damit geehrt. Hier in Deutschland nimmt die Jugendinitiative also einen Preis entgegen. In Serbien dagegen steht sie unter massivem Druck. In der Vergangenheit wurden schon Aktivisten bedroht und angegriffen, auch körperlich angegriffen. Das Büro wurde angegriffen, Todesdrohungen wurden an die Wände geschmiert. All solche Vorfälle zeigen, unter was für einem Druck die Organisation steht. Darüber werden wir heute Abend sprechen. Wie viele von Ihnen werden wahrscheinlich wissen, dass seit 2017 Aleksandar Vučić in Serbien regiert mit der serbischen Fortschrittspartei. Und ein Thema heute Abend wird auch sein, wie sich unter seiner Regierung der Druck auf unabhängige Medien, auf die Justiz, auf Menschenrechtsaktivistinnen erhöht hat. Und außerdem, auch das werden einige von Ihnen in den Medien sicher gesehen haben, gibt es in Serbien zurzeit große Proteste. Zuletzt war das vor 2 Wochen auch hier in Deutschland in den Medien, als sich der Einsturz des Bahnhofsvordachs in Novi Sad gejährt hat. Vor einem Jahr ist dort das Bahnhofsvordach eingestürzt, 16 Menschen sind dabei ums Leben gekommen. Und das war der Auslöser für eine breite Protestbewegung, die auch am vorvergangenen Wochenende wieder große Kundgebungen organisiert hat. Es ist also zurzeit wirklich einiges in Bewegung in Serbien. Über all das wollen wir heute Abend sprechen. Und wir wollen vor allen Dingen darüber sprechen, was die Aufarbeitung der Vergangenheit mit der politischen Gegenwart und der gesellschaftlichen Realität heute in Serbien, was es damit zu tun hat. So viel der inhaltlichen Vorrede von meiner Seite. Ganz kurz noch 2 Sätze zum Ablauf. Ich übergebe jetzt zunächst an meinen Kollegen Alexander Vojvoda von unserem Pro-Peace-Team im westlichen Balkan, der uns nochmal detaillierter die politische Lage schildern wird und einen Überblick gibt über unsere Friedensarbeit in der Region. Und anschließend werden wir dann ins Gespräch einsteigen mit Ivana und Branimir über die Arbeit der Jugendinitiative für Menschenrechte. Das heißt, jetzt übergebe ich an unser internationales Podium. Das Gespräch wechselt jetzt ins Englische. Das heißt, wenn Sie weiter auf Deutsch zuhören wollen, ist jetzt der Moment gekommen, dass Sie die Verdolmetschung einschalten, indem Sie unten auf Mehr klicken und dann über die Funktion Dolmetschen den Kanal auswählen, auf dem Sie zuhören wollen. Ich hoffe, jetzt haben alle den richtigen Kanal und würde jetzt übergeben an Alexander. I'll switch to English now and hand the microphone to you, Alexander.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Welcome everybody to this evening of discussion, of sharing. And I want to start with giving a little bit more examples and diving a little bit further into maybe understanding the political context of the region, but also especially of Serbia, and how our work as pro-peace, but also our cooperation with the Youth Initiative for Human Rights, and especially working on dealing with the past and transitional justice is embedded in this political context. Hannah already mentioned it, and I think it's really important to emphasize this again, that our work is embedded in a climate which is actually not dealing with the past. So most of our kind of engagement is confronted with neglection of the past, with a denial of the past, and our common work tries actually to dismantle this kind of construction, which is kind of contrasted by a very strong democratic erosion in Serbia. We are facing an authoritarian turn for several years, for quite some time, which is kind of accelerated decline in democratic governments and processes in Serbia. The power of the SNS party and also of President Vučić has consolidated its power across many branches of the government, of state institutions, but also of socio-political life, everyday life in Serbia. And I think that the protests which are happening since 1 year in Serbia, which were sparked by the collapse of the railway station canopy in Novi Sad, which killed 16 persons, is actually a cry against this capture of the state and is actually a call for justice and accountability. Many of the protests and the protesters and the students actually demand a clear kind of process of scrutiny of the events surrounding the collapse, but also want to hold the relevant institutions accountable for this tragedy. All of this is happening in an environment of shrinking spaces for civil society, media, independent organizations, but also activists like the Youth Initiative. So they are confronted with smear campaigns, surveillance, and other measures of repression, which means during earlier this year, several civil society organizations and the offices have been searched and searched during this period. Also, for example, other fragile spaces for dialogue, like the festival Medita Dobar Dan, which is a platform for artists and cultural organizations from Serbia and Kosovo, faced a ban in 2024, also which came along with intimidation and threats of the actors there. Behind this political background, Pro-Peace is active in the region since over 2 decades. Maybe Julius, you could show the map here, because we are having in the region 4 offices which are present in Sarajevo in Bosnia and Herzegovina, in Pristina in Kosovo, in Skopje in North Macedonia, and in Belgrade in Serbia. Our mandate in the region seeks to strengthen dialogue, remembrance, nonviolent conflict transformation, conflict resolution by nonviolent means, and in this we are cooperating with over 50 civil society organizations, media, and academic partners. Our main common goal or common topic is dealing with the past, press freedom, media freedom, and peace education. Together with our partners in Serbia, I just want to mention that we are mostly focusing on memory politics, culture of remembrance, youth engagement, and media partnership work. Together with Youth Initiative, we are especially focusing on countering denialist narratives, promote historical responsibilities, and emphasize and create spaces for cross-border dialogue with Kosovo and Bosnia-Herzegovina. Before we continue, I just want to mention a few of our collaborations which might exemplify what we are working on together with our long-standing partner, the Youth Initiative for Human Rights, which embody the principles that I mentioned before, that no democratic future can exist without confronting the past in a just and truthful way. I think in this context, Youth Initiative for Human Rights exemplifies how challenging the work is and how important it is to counter, for example, the glorification of war criminals, the denials of the atrocities and gross human rights abuses of the 1990s. And especially we are working on this through education, dialogue formats, and public engagement and activist formats. Here I already mentioned that one of those activities is the Medita Dobar Dan Festival, which has been banned last year and will take place this year in Pristina on the 20th of November. And also, which has been already mentioned, is the Srebrenica Memorial Project. Here, I especially want to mention a joint project which looks or seeks the promotion of the artistic concept of Šuma, which is in English forest, by the architect Mia David and the artist Antonio Grgic. Both of them envisioned a living memorial in Serbia, which entails one tree planted for each victim of the Srebrenica genocide, meaning over 8,300 trees should be planted on the premises in Serbia. One other example of our common work is the first organized visit of Serbian school children to the War Childhood Museum in Sarajevo. I think this is a very clear example of how concrete action can foster empathy between different communities, between school children, and spark discussion by direct encounters with personal memories of war and remembrance. I think just to close here with some of those examples and maybe then hand over again to Hanna, Branimir, and Ivan, I think that we need to see that the current situation in Serbia is very dire in a certain way. Media are being restricted, activists are being attacked, and generally spaces for participation and civic protest is shrinking. And I think that our collaboration with the youth initiatives show how dialogue, empathy, and multi-layered culture of remembrance can have an impact in this environment. And I think this is kind of an essential part of our work, to protect these spaces, to support our partners, to create these spaces where truth, justice, and holding perpetrators and politicians accountable can take place.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Alexander, for the introduction and the overview. And now, as announced, we would start our conversation with Branimir and Ivana to learn more about the youth initiative and their work. If you allow me, Branimir and Ivana, I would like to start with a personal question. In our previous meeting, I did something that one shouldn't do. I asked you for your age, but I wanted to know if you had personal memories of the war. And you told me that you were very young, respectively not born yet when the war happened, except for some early childhood memories. You haven't experienced it yourself, but both of you grew up in a society that was strongly impacted by and shaped by the aftermath of the war. So I wanted to ask you, how did it feel like growing up in this society shaped by the war? And what did you learn about the war in school or in university or when speaking with your families?
So should I start first or? Okay, well, first of all, many thanks for having us here. And I'm really always glad to speak about, well, things in Serbia and also things that we do as Youth Initiative for Human Rights. So my name is Ivana Nikolic, and I work at the Youth Initiative as a research coordinator. But to go back to your question, as I know that we don't have really much time, and we would also like to hear some questions probably from the audience. So I was born when the war started, that is in 1991, and I do have some direct memories of the war. If war is still what happened in 1999 when Yugoslavia was bombed by NATO, I was almost 8 at that point, and I do still remember people panicking. I remember propaganda on the well, at that point I didn't know it was propaganda, but growing up and being part, especially being part of civil society in Serbia and in the Balkans, you get to understand things. But I'm not sure that I would say that we grew up in a society shaped by the war, because in Serbia, you don't really get to know about the wars. So growing up in Serbia means growing up when we speak about dealing with the past and this inglorious past in general, it's basically about growing up in denial. So when you listen about the wars, it's only that we were either victims or winners of the war. So you don't really get to hear other perspectives. When it comes to the wars of the 1990s, we don't learn about them at schools. And even if we do, it's maybe, let's say, 2 pages. It's very, very one-sided, extremely biased. We mostly talk about Serbian victims from for example, Operation Storm in 1995. We talk about the NATO bombing of Serbia, which I just mentioned. So in my case, and I think this is also a very important layer or perspective of the story. This is something that's not my unique experience. Basically, it's something that can be copy-pasted to each and every person, for example, within the Youth Initiative for Human Rights, or basically, any other individual. So I grew up in a family both of my parents have university degrees, both of them opposed Milosevic, both of them traveled a lot, both of them didn't like the regime, but we never talked about the wars. I don't know why. It can be like a mixture of other various factors. Maybe they didn't want to bother us with that. Maybe they were just fed up with the fact that a full decade of their lives was stolen from them, because Yugoslavia was fully isolated at that point, and they also suffered a lot. So I don't know why, but it wasn't until I was 23 that I learned what really happened. And I learned because I started as an intern at BIRN, which stands for Balkan Investigative Regional Reporting Network. I'm a journalist by profession. And I joined a team of colleagues and fellow journalists who worked on a documentary exploring war crimes that were committed by Serbian forces in Kosovo in 1999. So in my case, and that is also important to mention, I was among the best students in high school, also at the university, but I knew nothing about this. So it wasn't until I was 23 that I actually learned what was happening, well, in our name or not in our name, but definitely was promoted by the Serbian authorities. So maybe I can stop here and I'll give some space to Bane. So that's how I learned, and that's how many other also learned. And that's what we are fighting for at the Youth Initiative, to give this kind of informal education to young people who actually want to know what happened.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, Branimir, maybe you can share with us also how it was for you, and whether you also had a moment like Ivana described when you started questioning these narratives that you grew up with. Was there one moment when you thought, stop, there must be another side to the story?
Thank you, Hannah. I mean, yes, because like Ivana, I was born in the end of that period. I was born in the 1999 during the NATO bombing, and of course that was very stressful for my parents, and you can imagine that that influenced the narrative also in my family, in my home. But also, as Ivana, we didn't learn that much about that in school, and but. One example, just to see what was the childhood in Serbia in the 2000s and early 2010s. I remember watching trials in The Hague, and that was really normal thing to see on everyday television. It was common thing, and people, whenever there is a family gathering or whatnot, there is always that topic of war crimes, who is the victim, who is the perpetrator. And so on. But in a way, I kind of, even as a kid, I kind of sense, maybe that sounds weird, but I kind of sense that something is wrong with that narrative. It's especially because even though we had that narrative in home, still my parents were very, I couldn't say open-minded, but like they let me to explore those things, and then I found, and as much as the more I read and learned about it, I kind of get the impression that something is really, really off. And actually, during my studies, because I studied political science and international relations, I found out so many things. And still, because I'm working in the Youth Initiative since the last year, I learned so much about the 90s, and I'm still learning. You know, every day I learn something more, because there is one whole decade that the regime in Serbia and the dominant narrative is trying to, you know, erase or to present it in a different way. And so I'm now even more thrilled to learn and to see and to spread that knowledge. But I must say, even my friends, close friends, are very skeptical of what I'm doing, because they're influenced so much with that narrative, especially because they're not in this field, and they're not in social sciences and humanities. They're in different fields. So you can imagine that they got that narrative, and now they're skeptical about my work, which is weird, because I mean, you should trust your friends, I guess, but this is not the case, and that's quite a normal thing, unfortunately, in Serbia.
Thanks a lot. So yeah, you have already described kind of the challenges that you're facing here. Two aspects of the work of the youth initiative are very striking. One of it is even in the name. It's Youth Initiative for Human Rights. So it's already in the title that you're focusing on young people. And as I mentioned in the introduction, you are working across borders. You are working in different countries in the Western Balkans. Can you explain us a little bit more why this focus on young people and on cross-border work?
Yeah, I'm going to give you actually one example. 2 years ago, we conducted a research. We wanted to see actually how much young people in Serbia knows about wars in the 90s and then related topics. And we saw that like vast majority of them doesn't know anything, you know, like they don't know, for so many people, you don't know who were, for example, who was Ratko Mladic, for example, even though he was convicted for genocide in Srebrenica. And I mean, you know, when you're talking about the dealing with the past, you kind of know that you should, in order to feel peace with yourself, to have peace with yourself, and in order so you can move forward, you have to deal with what was happening, and you need to have like some healthy foundation for some new democratic country, new democratic Serbia in the future. And obviously we can work with young people because they're kind of confused. They don't know much. They want to learn, many of them. And I'm proud to say that every year we have more and more young people willing to participate in our various activities, you know, summer schools, workshops, conferences, various events, because they really want to learn about this. Because as we said, there is not much opportunities in Serbia to learn about the 90s. So we are trying to, with them, to create, you know, a healthy foundation for some future generations, because hopefully one day they're going to share that knowledge that they got from us to their kids, to their grandchildren, and then we can make some huge progress on it. And of course, we are trying to do that, as you said, across border. So we are trying to connect young people from all of the countries, especially from Serbia and Kosovo, because there is a huge difference because of the language. You know, the language barrier is huge. With Croatia or Bosnia, it's not, but with Kosovo, it's huge. And that's probably one of the main focuses of our work. And it's interesting when they meet for the first time, Serbs and Albanians, they found out how many things they have in common. You know, same problems, listening same music, same watching same, you know, movies, watching the same TV series, and so on. And so there is huge impact with that work. So we are trying to continue with that, but as also you said, and as Alexander said, unfortunately, there are so many obstacles, and that way there are so many people who don't want us to do that. You know, they don't want us to connect communities across the region.
Thanks. Yeah, we'll get to that in a moment. Before, I want to show one video of one activity that you did this year. Maybe Julius, you can put it on the screen, because 2025 is marking many significant anniversaries in the Western Balkans. And this is one activity that you did on the commemoration of 30 years since the genocide in Srebrenica. I understand this is an activity that you did in Belgrade on the Central Square. And maybe, Ivana, you can describe and tell us what happened here. What do we see here in this video?
Yes, of course. Well, it's important to know that Youth Initiative, together with many other civil society organizations in Serbia, has been commemorating Srebrenica genocide for years, and we always do it in the city center. The video that you are now watching was filmed this year. It was July 10th, 2025. It was basically downtown Belgrade, the city center. And this is a commemoration or performance which was actually created and led, to put it that way, by Women in Black, or Žene u crnom. This is another very important and prominent civil society organization that was founded in the beginning of the wars. And these women, they have done amazing things for reconciliation and dealing with the past, and commemorations in general. So what you can see there are, well, people holding mirrors, and we have 30 people holding 30 mirrors, each mirror for 1 year since the Srebrenica genocide took place. And basically the idea behind this performance was that ordinary citizens can just approach these mirrors, and they can, and what they will actually see in it will be basically the role of Serbia in the Srebrenica genocide. And then one of the roles of Serbia in Srebrenica genocide, as judged by the court, is that Serbia was found responsible for not stopping genocide in Srebrenica. So that was probably one of the most important and one of the most powerful events that took place when it comes to the commemorations.
And I understand also that you were both there that day. Basically, you told me the whole office was there, the whole team. Can you tell us a little bit about what kind of reactions did you get from people passing by who saw the performance?
Well, people were quite curious. They wanted to understand what was happening. And what I can also say, and I'm sort of proud of that, is because the following day, actually on July 11th, we had another performance at the same place, again with Women in Black, but also many other CSOs together with Pro Peace, for example. People would approach and then they would ask what is going on, and then you would explain to them and they would understand it. And many would just be completely normal with that without arguing. Of course, you always have people who would deny what was happening, what happened actually in 1995. And that is something that is extremely widespread in Serbia. So denial is extremely widespread, and you will always get across people who tell you, that didn't happen. The West arranged everything, so that was a setup. We didn't kill them, they killed us, But my feeling, especially for the July 11th commemoration, when we had this mother's scarf performance, maybe you can also show that as well.
Yes, we have a photo here.
Yeah, my personal impression was that people found it really interesting and also very moving.
Can you briefly tell us what this activity is about? The scarves that we see?
Yes, so basically, I suppose you all know about Mothers of Srebrenica, or Majke Srebrenica. This is a network of women that were affected by the Srebrenica genocide in various ways. They lost husbands, brothers, relatives, and they formed this organization. They are very well known for these scarves that they wear, their headscarves. And a couple of years ago, they came up with this initiative that is called Mother Scarf. I think it was first installed in 2023. And basically the idea is, as you can see here, that people gather in a circle, and we all have these scarves in our hands, and we tie one to another and we raise them like this. And that is how we stood for a couple of moments. Well, not a couple of moments, but for quite some time in Belgrade this summer. And then what you can also see are these candles. Everyone, basically all citizens could just approach this, and they could also light a candle. What you can see, it says Ljudi pamte ljude, or people remember people. And then I'm not sure if you can see the number, but it says 8372, and that is the approximate number of victims of Srebrenica genocide. So yes, that is what we did this July 11th. And I think it's also important to mention that these events are always very risky, extremely risky, which is why there is always police protection, that just a lot of police officers, just making sure that people are safe.
Yeah, let's maybe move on from the projects that you do to commemorate the past to talking about the present. Maybe, Branimir, a question to you. What do you say to people who say, that's all in the past, that's a long time ago, let's focus on the future?
Yeah, we get that a lot, actually, unfortunately. Yeah, but as I said, we always try to explain to them why it is important to deal with that. And one of the main reasons, because they always say, we should forget the past and so move forward, as you said. But sometimes they can, yeah, maybe we can try to forget the past. But the thing is that the past is, not leaving us. Because currently in Serbia, the people who are in power, those are the same people who were in power during the 90s, people who supported those politics and ideologies that brought to war and genocide and war crimes. In order to, in a way, deal with them, it's important to deal with our past. I mean, the 90s are just only recent past that we should deal with, but there is so many things in the Serbia's history during the 20th century that we should deal with it, to address it. But currently we are focusing mostly on the 90s, but everything is kind of connected, actually. But we're focusing on the 90s because, same people, and as I said, those people are opposing everything that we do, because they know they're responsible, and they are trying to avoid that responsibility, and they're trying to present completely different narrative, the dominant narrative, as we already said. But as I said, it's hard for people to understand that, because whenever we, for example, say that Aleksandar Vučić was, for example, a minister of information in the Milosevic government during the 90s, they kind of ignore that, because they say, no, that's not important. Important is, the only thing that is important is that this is corrupt government. That they're focusing on those things. Of course, those are huge problems, but actually they're completely avoiding the topic of the 90s, because the truth is that people are scared of that truth, because they kind of feel that something is wrong, but it's difficult to admit it. I mean, everyone have problem to admit some things that we did in our personal lives. So you can imagine how difficult it is for people to admit what was happening in the name of Serbia and Serbian national identity in the 90s.
Mm-hmm. So let us, thanks a lot. And let us take now a closer look at what you just mentioned, the present and how difficult it is. Let us take a closer look how the context of your work has changed in the last years. Can you explain to us the pressure that organizations such as the Youth Initiative are under right now, and where that pressure comes from?
Yes, I can take that one. Well, I think it's first important to understand and to tell people that organizations such as Youth Initiative, we have been under pressure since the beginning. So for us, being targets of smear campaigns, of tabloids, or of pro-government attacks, that's really nothing new, because when you, and Bane mentioned that several times today, when you keep challenging dominant state-sponsored narratives, then of course you are enemy of the state. And that's how we've been portrayed since forever, as foreign mercenaries, enemies of the state, foreign agents, you name it. So we've been attacked before these protests, and I can name just a couple of things that happened to us. For example, we also mentioned a couple of times Mirdite Dobar Dan festival, which aims to connect Serbia and Kosovo cultural scene. So it was banned in Belgrade, and a couple of days, I think maybe a day or two after it was banned, we received a package on our office, and it was, wait for it, dead pig's head. So someone basically put dead pig's head into the box and sent it to us. And we know who did it, because they signed the letter. It's a right-wing, ultra-wing group in Serbia, fully protected by the state. No one did nothing, even though we pressed charges. So that's what happened in June 2024. So it was before the student protests. Then, for example, we have this nice office with the glass in the central Belgrade, and quite often, regularly, we get all sorts of things on the glass. For example, we get Ratko Mladic quite a lot, or we get Srebrenica was not a genocide quite a lot, or people that work at the youth initiative are regularly targeted in the pro-government media. So no matter the crisis, we are always the enemies. Or, for example, our director, Sofia, she was detained a total of 10 times for, I think, during summer months of 2024. Basically, every time she leaves the country and every time she comes back, she's detained at the airport or at the border crossing. So it's a nightmare. So basically, when this entire thing happened after the collapse of Canopy in Novi Sad, I mean, we are sort of prepared for these attacks, because I'm not sure if we know to live if we know how to function differently, if not in these hostile situations. But of course, that things changed. I mean, it is even worse to work like in this extremely hostile situation, when basically you just wake up in the morning and you are not really sure what's going to happen that day and who's going to be targeted that day. So what we had is constant media targeting, leak of our documents in pro-government media, then more attacks on our premises. Then when it comes to the projects that we are implementing, I can say maybe two sides of the coin. For example, we have this project that we do with the Youth Initiative for Human Rights in Kosovo. It's an ongoing project which basically aims to bring young people from Kosovo to spend 3 months in Belgrade, living and working in the Serbian capital, and vice versa. So Serbs going to Pristina for 3 months period. Ever since the protest started, and ever since, this situation is completely out of hand, people from Kosovo, they are not really, willing to come here. They're afraid, because what we can hear during protests, but also in pro-government media, what we can hear everywhere is Aco Šiptare, and that is just one of the insults. Aco, it refers to Aleksandar Vučić's nickname, Aco, and Šiptare is a derogatory term for Albanians. It's like the ultimate insult in Serbia is when someone calls you Šiptar, so derogatory term for Albanians. So people from Kosovo don't feel welcome here. They don't feel safe here. So, for example, this is really something that is directly impacting our project. But on the other hand, when it comes to many other activities that we are implementing, other projects and programs, we, as Bane said, we even have more applications for people who want to be part of our programs. Because I think this full year of hate speech, of erosion of democracy, erosion of freedom of speech, erosion of media freedom, and of course, these brave young people, I think this all just somehow showed also to them how important it is to seek some kind of informal education. So these turbulent times are actually making young people look for informal education. They want to upgrade their skills, the skills they need to fight unjust systems, unjust regimes. And I think that is why many of our programs now have much bigger number of applications. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I can stop here. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, you did. Thank you very much. And Banime, Ivana already mentioned in her answer the protests. Can we take a step back here, and can you explain to our viewers who might not know all the details about the protest a little bit more about what they are about, who's protesting, and why?
Yeah, basically, protest actually started on the November 3rd last year, so 2 days after the canopy fell, and the initial, like the moving strength of the protest are students. So for the last almost a year, faculties were blocked. So we couldn't attend their classes or got our exams because students decided to block faculties in order to pressure, in a way, government to, first of all, because there was 4 demands by students. One of them is that the government should present to the broader public all documentation of the reconstruction regarding the reconstruction of the railway station in Novi Sad, and to just find out who is responsible for the death of 16 people. And also one of the demands was to arrest and try those people who attacked students on those protests, because they blocked the faculties first time when somebody attacked students who were actually commemorating or pay respect to the people who died in the Novi Sad. And since then, in Serbia, situation is really chaotic. We found out, I mean, it's obvious that the government is not willing to, address any of those demands. So students decided to ask for to demand the elections. And the interesting thing here is that this is the first time in the history of this regime, and this regime is here from 2012. So in the 13-year period, this is the first time that regime in Serbia is not willing to go to the elections, because this is the first time that their authority is actually challenged so much that they're not sure that they can win the elections. And now they're trying to evade that topic. Unfortunately, one example of what they're doing is that in the front of the National Assembly, there is a huge space in front of the National Assembly and also a road there. And since March this year, pro-regime activists and also members of the Serbian Progressive Party blocked that area. You can see tents, and also we know that in those tents are people who are very problematic. We know that those are criminals, also for people who were convicted for war crimes and so on, and they are literally physically defending the regime, occupying that space. That space is really suitable for gatherings, for the protests. And it really sends a message when you have a huge gathering there. You cannot ignore it. And that's one of the main reasons why they block that area, so people cannot protest. But we had some of the biggest protests of history of Serbia. On the 15th March this year, we had a protest with at least 300,000 people protesting, which is huge. We didn't have such protests on the 5th of October 2000 when Milosevic fell. So you can see how people are now angry so much on this regime because of what they did to Serbia. Corruption, complete lawlessness in Serbia, organized crimes is flourishing here. I mean, and of course for us in the civil society organizations, it's hell, because we are the easiest target for the regime. We are often defending others, because we have capacities to to pay lawyers for some people who are attacked or whatnot. But there is nobody who can protect us, and we are so the easiest target. It's really easy to say that we are foreign agents, traitors, that we hate Serbia. And unfortunately, as we said, because of the dominant narrative, it's very suitable. It fits perfectly in that narrative. So people sometimes are really skeptical of our work, that means that sometimes we don't even have a support from the broader public. And then you can feel that we are, alone in this fight, and only our some activists and of course young people and our international partners, but that's it. And we are hoping that one day we can create normal environment for us to function, and I'm kind of optimistic that at some point sooner or later, I mean, it will happen.
Thank you very much. I see that the first questions from the audience are coming in. So again, invitation to everybody listening to put their questions in the chat. We will take them in a moment. I will ask one last question to the two of you, and then we'll take questions from the audience to have some time to discuss those as well. So last question from my side before we open the floor is, we've now heard about the protest, and we could go on and on because there's so much more to talk about, but we've heard how it affects your work, both in terms of you being targeted by authorities, repressions taken against you, activities that had to be cancelled, But you also mentioned that interest is rising. Ivana, you said more people are coming to you and looking for these informal opportunities for informal education. So it has it's kind of a two-sided effect that you described. So my question to you is, while it is still unclear in which directions the protest will develop and whether they will be able to reach meaningful change, what are your hopes for the future of the Serbian society? What do you personally hope for?
Well, it's $1 million question, you know. So what I would like to see, I'm not sure if that's really going to happen. But I will say what I think the vast majority of people here think, and I think Bane also mentioned this. We haven't seen this energy, and we haven't seen so many people protesting against something for decades. Maybe we've never seen that before. I was in Novi Sad, Bane was there as well, and as so many people were there on November the 1st. And for me, that was maybe the most important. So just to explain what that was. So maybe November the 1st, 11 days ago, it marked the very first anniversary of the tragedy. So students basically called everyone who wants to come for 16 minutes of silence, and for basically full day of various activities and commemoration things mostly. So imagine we all came there, and I knew no one of these 16 people. I don't live in Novi Sad, so I live 2 hours by car away from Novi Sad, even more. But we all came there. And then I just stood there, and we, of course, were silent for 16 minutes. And I said, wow, so we all came here. We didn't know these people, but we were so willing to attend this, commemoration because of empathy, because of solidarity with the victims and their families, because it could have been any one of us, and because we are fed up with this regime. So for me, that was the most important probably moment in this year, because 1 year after, people are still willing to fight for, well, nothing extraordinary, you know, just a very decent life. So what I would like to see, we have this saying, to put it that way, I'm not sure how to translate it into English, nemojte spuštati tenzije, but yeah, Bane, maybe you can help me. We should keep tensions high, meaning that we should be here, we should keep fighting for democracy, for transparency, for accountability. Well, maybe first for accountability, for the rule of law, for all these values that we are actually valuing as a society. I would also like to remind you that our students, they walked and they rode their bicycles to Brussels and Strasbourg. So they went to the most important European cities, because they share the common values as those of European Union. So I would like to see this regime finally leaving the stage. I would like to see those people that are actually responsible for at least 16 people, because 16 people died, but dozens more were directly affected by the tragedy. I would like to see them prosecuted. I would like to see my fellow colleague journalists working in normal circumstances. I would also like to see that for my colleagues at the Youth Initiative and, of course, any other civil society organization. I would like to have my kids raised in a normal, just, democratic society, which has dealt with its past adequately and properly. And I would like to keep my pink glasses on, because I really would like to see that happening. And I know it's not going to happen tomorrow or in 10 days. Maybe it's not going to happen in 1 year, but I would not like us to stop now. I would like us to continue fighting. And also, what is also very important, I would like to see our European partners standing by us, but really standing by the people of Serbia, not by the regime. Yeah, that's from my side.
Bane, is there anything to add? Ivana has already mentioned so many points, but I still want to give you the chance to say something if you like. But then we also want to take questions from the audience, so I would have to ask you to be brief.
Yeah, just one thing. I mean, I agree with everything that Ivana said, and I cannot stress enough how important it is that our European Union partners support us, because unfortunately, especially European Commission, they're very, they're closely cooperating with this regime. And also German government, for example, in the period of Angela Merkel, was really, pro-Vucic. And that it doesn't help us, and so we really need support from the EU. EU is supporting, for example, Ukraine. EU is supporting Georgia, which is great, but we also need support because Vucic is also like Orban, like Fico, like European Union already have those people. So you don't really need another authoritarian guy in Europe. So yeah.
Thank you very much for clear words and for explaining to our viewers from the Serbian perspective what your hopes are. And now I would really like to open the floor to questions from the audience. And I see there already have been some questions in the chat, and I will hand over to my colleague Vanessa, who can tell us more about what has been asked in the chat. By the way, you are very welcome to write your questions either in German or English. Both is fine. We can translate where needed. So feel free to ask. Vanessa, it's your turn.
Yeah, thank you, Hannah, and good evening, everyone. Yeah, we've received already a few questions. One participant would like to hear more about impact. She says, besides the number of youth attending your programs, how else do you measure impact? What are some milestones you've reached at ProPeace or with the youth organizations? Maybe Branimir or Ivana, could you tell us something about that?
Yeah, I can take this one. I wasn't just sure if that's a question for the Youth Initiative or for ProPeace, but I can answer about Youth Initiative. So of course, yes, there have been quite a number of milestones when it comes to the impact. What I can name here is, for example, well, one, maybe it sounds general, but we have been building bridges for 23 years among former warring sides. And I think that is probably the most important impact of our work. That's today still there are people who are very willing to take part in everything that we do. In terms of, as was said here, specific milestones, maybe you know, maybe you don't know, but a couple of years ago, RAICO, or Regional Youth Cooperation Office, was established. And why it is so important? Well, it was established in 2016, I think, or 17. Why is that important? It is important because Youth Initiative has been one of the most important advocates for such an institution. And I say institution because it's a regional body which is actually promoting a youth exchange among former warring sides, and is fully funded by the governments of these former warring sides. So RAICO is definitely one of the most important things that we did. Then someone also mentioned here Aachen Peace Prize that we got last year. We also got Václav Havel Peace Prize in 2021, I think, or two, can't remember really. Then what we also did is, for example, United Nations General Assembly, as you probably know, established July 11th as a day for commemoration and reflection of Srebrenica genocide victims. And Youth Initiative was among the organizations that advocated for this to be established, for this day to be established as such. We even sent a letter in the name of many other youth activists across the region, so not only from Serbia. And yeah, maybe not something that is more maybe relevant to what we just discussed. Many of these extraordinary, brave young people, thanks to whom we have these protests today, are actually alumni of Youth Initiative for Human Rights. And a very small group of people, a very small group of students that started the protests last November is an informal group, STAV. Many of them, unfortunately, are in political exile right now. Many of them are facing a trial, which is set to begin quite soon. And many of them were actually part of our programs. So we are happy that we actually managed to transfer all those values and to have a real impact on younger generations.
Thank you, Ivana. Maybe also the same question to Alex. What are some milestones you've reached at the Western Balkan program of POPIS?
I think that the milestones we are reaching is especially related to the collaboration with our partners. And I think that the biggest achievement, I think, and impact we are having is in these cooperations. And I would say the support for the festival Medita Dobar Dan is a very important aspect for us, because it's the only platform where on a cultural and artistic level, the exchange or the channels are open between Kosovo and Serbia, where exchange is happening, where dialogue and reconciliation and culture of remembrance is discussed. And I think for ProPeace, it's really important to support those kind of platforms, which are inherently important for questions of dealing with the past and transitional justice. The other aspect is, of course, if we're talking now about the year 2025, we established cross-border research on the question of the impact of the 30th anniversary of the Srebrenica genocide, which was conducted by one Serbian researcher and one Bosnian researcher, which kind of gave a status quo analysis on where the culture of remembrance is at the moment in the respective countries, and also gives recommendations on a short-term level, but also looks a little bit into the future. What are actions which need to be taken to make the culture of remembrance more inclusive, more multi-layered, and more emphasize accountability. And I think here, especially, I can just emphasize that the aspect of European partners is very important, that the question of the role of Germany is very important. And I think here, as ProPeace, we have a kind of an intermediary role to kind of facilitate those processes and highlight the importance of these topics and the work of our partners, like we do, for example, in this webinar.
Thank you, Alexander. Maybe another question to Branimir or Ivana. How do you perceive the tensions between Serbia and Bosnia, especially concerning the situation in the Serbian republics in Bosnia? Do you have any contacts to Bosnian people?
Yes, we have contacts with them because of course we have office also in Sarajevo. I mean, Bosnia is a difficult question overall. I mean, it's probably in the political theory, Bosnia is probably the most complicated country in the world. With 3 head of states, with 2 entities, or should I say 3 entities. It's really difficult to work with them, and unfortunately, the regime in Republic of Srpska, which is Serbian part of the Bosnia and Herzegovina, is really it's really hard to cooperate with them. And that's one of the reasons why we rarely have people from Republic of Srpska participating in our events. Because the narrative there is so strong. I would say that it's maybe even stronger than in Serbia, when it comes to who is the victim, who is the perpetrator. And maybe, I mean, that's kind of understandable because those people were directly affected by the war, unlike people in Serbia for the most part. So it's difficult to work with them. But together with our office in Sarajevo and Zagreb, we are trying to give our in a way, how do I say, to support them in a way that we can. But unfortunately, because we have so many problems here, it's really difficult for us to resolve their problems in a way. But we are trying, yeah. But but now, as you maybe heard, the situation now is kind of better in Bosnia because the tensions are now lower because the president of Republic of Srpska is now willing to cooperate in a way. So we'll see what will happen with Bosnia in the future. But the one thing that is really problematic and that we can see clearly in the Balkans, that international community, which is the responsible for the Bosnia and Herzegovina, because they also have the high representative from the UN and so on, it's kind of clueless how to resolve the issue with Bosnia, and we can sense that in the whole region, and that kind of complicates the relationship in relations in the whole region. You know, also with Croatia, also with Serbia. So yeah.
Thank you, Branimir. That leads me to the next question. What opportunities do you see in Serbia now that you can build on to drive the socio-political change?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. I suppose when you say opportunities, I suppose it refers to dealing with the past and, well, maybe, yeah. Well, there is this very stupid journalistic way that journalists sometimes end their pieces. It says it remains to be seen, but sometimes it's not that stupid. Sometimes that's everything that we can actually say. It definitely remains to be seen how this will unfold in the future. I think there are plenty of opportunities that we will finally be able, and not only able, but that we will be willing to face the past. And why is that? It is because, and Bane mentioned that several times today, basically people who led us into the wars, people who mobilized ethno-nationalism, and people who are, who are supposed to be in jail, are now the people leading this country, or are their closest allies. Bane also mentioned this space in front of the National Assembly. It is full of alleged war criminals, actual war criminals, but not only war criminals, but criminals in general. And there is now huge distance in the society towards these people. So that's how I would like this to see. And that's how I would like this to stay. That finally now we have a difference between, or we can crystal clear see what is happening, and what has been happening for decades now. That people who actually have been running this country and their closest allies are people who led us into the wars, who are responsible, who masterminded some of the most brutal atrocities and human rights violations in the wars of the 1990s. And I would like us to be fully separated from them. So yes, now we have the opportunity, in one sentence, I think that now we do have the opportunity to finally deal with the past, as we should have dealt with the past at least 30 years ago.
Thank you, Ivana. I'm afraid we don't have any time for any more questions, so I'll hand back to Hannah.
Yes, time's running. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to everyone. As our event is coming to a close, I will be wrapping up in German. So now would be the time to switch back to the other audio channel if you have been listening in English or German respectively. So now would be the time. Click on more and then you can choose the channel. Now I will be switching back to German. Das war unsere Veranstaltung. Ja, vielen Dank, dass Sie eingeschaltet haben, dass Sie heute mit dabei waren. Es freut mich sehr, dass auch der Chat so lebhaft war und Sie viele Fragen gestellt haben. Ich weiß, wir konnten nicht alle aufgreifen. Wir hätten sicher noch sehr lange weiterreden können und alles noch weiter diskutieren können. Aber jetzt nähern wir uns dem Ende der heutigen Veranstaltung. Ich möchte mich ganz herzlich bedanken bei unseren Gästen, Ivana, Branimir, Alexander. Vielen, vielen Dank, dass ihr heute dabei wart, dass ihr uns so viel erzählt habt über eure Arbeit und auch über die Herausforderungen, vor denen ihr steht. Vielen, vielen Dank für die Eindrücke. Zum Abschluss möchte ich gerne noch eine Frage an Sie richten, liebes Publikum. Mich würde interessieren, wenn Sie mögen, dass Sie uns sagen, mit welchem Gefühl gehen Sie heute aus dieser Veranstaltung? Was ist bei Ihnen hängen geblieben? Was hat Sie vielleicht berührt? Was hat Sie überrascht? Teilen Sie das gerne im Chat. Es würde mich sehr freuen, wenn Sie uns da noch einen Eindruck oder ein Gefühl dalassen, mit dem Sie heute aus der Veranstaltung gehen. Dann möchte ich nochmal darauf hinweisen und Sie nochmal herzlich einladen, dass Sie auch nächste Woche wieder dabei sind bei unseren nächsten Veranstaltungen. Nächste Woche geht es weiter mit einer Veranstaltung zum Thema Konflikte in Deutschland und wie wir gesellschaftliche Spaltung auch bei uns überwinden können. Wir werden schauen nach Niedersachsen in die Kommune Salzgitter und erfahren, wie dort das gelungen ist, gesellschaftliche Spaltung zu überwinden. Eine Woche später, am 26. November, blicken wir dann zum Abschluss unserer Veranstaltungsreihe in die Ukraine und werden mehr erfahren über Empathiearbeit und wie die dabei helfen kann, Traumata in Zeiten des Krieges zu bewältigen. Wir würden uns sehr freuen, wenn Sie wieder dabei sind, wenn Sie auf dem Laufenden bleiben wollen über Veranstaltungen, über unsere Arbeit, dann abonnieren Sie gerne unseren Newsletter, wenn Sie den noch nicht haben. Dann verpassen Sie auch wirklich gar keine Veranstaltung mehr in der Zukunft. Dann sind Sie immer up to date. Wir freuen uns also sehr, wenn Sie mit uns in Kontakt bleiben. Und wir freuen uns natürlich auch, wenn Sie unsere Friedensarbeit mit einer Spende unterstützen würden. Die Spenden für ProPeace, die kommen unserer weltweiten Friedensarbeit zugute und natürlich damit auch unseren Partnern und Projekten wie denen von der Youth Initiative, der Jugendinitiative, über die wir heute mehr erfahren haben. Also wenn Sie in den Frieden investieren wollen, tun Sie das gerne in Form einer Spende. Damit bleibt mir nur noch, mich zu verabschieden und Ihnen allen einen schönen Abend zu wünschen. Ich bedanke mich nochmal ganz herzlich für Ihr Interesse. Bleiben Sie gesund und alles Gute von meiner Seite. Auf Wiedersehen.